welcome you to our Meet the Candidates event. The New Lenox Council of Teachers, IFT, AFT Local 604, and I, Katie Koras, the president of our union, would like to thank you all for coming to our event to meet our school board candidates. We are so very proud of our district and want to give everyone an opportunity to hear from and meet our 8 candidates, 3 of whom will be our new or our repeat board members. For tonight, we asked all of the candidates to prepare an opening statement. We had asked them all to address the following in their statement. Number 1, please define your role as an existing future member of the school board. What inspired you to run for the school board? What specific qualifications or strengths do you bring to the board? What goals do you have for your term? What strengths do you see in our district? What improvements do you see needed in our district? The tax levy was recently passed by our school board. How would you have voted on this tax levy and why? If you are a current board member, how did you vote for the tax levy and what was the reason for your decision? In a moment, we will be hearing these statements from the candidates in alphabetical order, to be fair. And after that, our teachers have created questions for our candidates. Candidates, you each have a bag at your place, and each bag contains the same set of 19 questions. Each of you will please withdraw a single question when it is your turn, and then we will ask you to answer the question in a 2-minute time limit. After the question is answered, one of us will come by, pick up the question from you, and if time permits, we do have one question we would like all of you to answer before the night ends. So thank you so much, all of you, for participating in our event tonight. Thank you. So we'd like to first hear from Mrs. Babington.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by saying thank you to the American Federation of Teachers, and specifically the New Lenox Council of Teachers, Local 604. In addition, I would like to thank all the New Lenox residents and teachers who are present here today. I want to start by talking a little bit about myself. I have been married for 10 years to my wonderful husband, Kevin, and we are both originally from Chicago South Side, and together we have 2 children, Olivia, who is 4, and Ethan, who will be 1 on March 7th. I received the Chick Evans Scholarship to Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It is based upon academics, community involvement, and caddy achievement. And during this time, I studied abroad at St. Clair's of Oxford University in Oxford, England. I have over 17 years of achievement in the corporate and nonprofit world simultaneously. I have an extensive project management, financial, communications, and customer service background. For a large part of my career, I worked at LaSalle Bank, now Bank of America, where I served as both an administrator and a leader, becoming project management, Series 7 and 63 certified, while building a whole new division of the bank. My nonprofit experience includes working as a board member for a local chapter of an internationally recognized organization, and also working as an administrator for another Chicago-based nonprofit organization. In addition, I have also volunteered for many other prominent organizations. As a volunteer, I have orchestrated many local and statewide fundraising events, as well as initiatives for all these organizations. My current job is a stay-at-home mom of 2. We moved to New Lenox in the spring of 2013 and have enjoyed our time here greatly. We have family out here in New Lenox for over 20 years, and prior to living here, we spent a great amount of time in the community. I have always been engaged in my community wherever we've lived, and we're looking for opportunities to contribute to my services and talents where I can. Whether it be at St. Jude Church, my daughter's school, or other local organizations. I like to jump in and see what I can do with my time and my effort and my energies. In following the birth of my son, I was looking to get more involved in the community, and from what I have seen within the district, whether it be the parent involvement or the warmness of the teachers and staff, the community support, I wanted to be part of the great things happening in New Lenox, and more specifically here at 122. I felt that running for the board not only helps me satisfy my desire and passion for community service, but also provides me with an avenue to contribute to my children's education as well as the community. In conclusion, I will be an asset to the board, and I will bring my years of experience and expertise and dedication while demonstrating the utmost respect for the parents, teachers, principals, and employees of the district. The responsibility of being a school board member is a great one, and one that I promise not to take lightly. Given the opportunity, I know I can live up to the task. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Broderick. You want to go ahead?
Hello, my name is Maureen Flanagan Broderick. I'm an incumbent seeking re-election to the New Lenox School District Board on April 7th. In my 12 years on the school board, I've been the board secretary, chairman of the finance committee, District 843 special ed rep, the Three Rivers rep, and the ISB delegate for our district. I'm a master board member, which is with over 700 hours of continuing education, and I'm a lifetime member of the Leadership Academy that school board members belong to. I'm Maureen Flanagan Broderick. I'm born and raised in New Lenox. I'm married to Greg, and we have 3 children, with my youngest now being a sophomore in college. I'm a grandmother, too, of 2 young boys, Jacob 4 and Josh 2. I'm a graduate of Lewis University and have a banking, mortgage, lending experience for over 38 years of my life. I'm a lifetime member of St. Jude's, taught religious education for 36 years. I'm an auxiliary member of the VFW. I've been an ambassador to the New Lenox Chamber and treasurer to the Lincoln Way Business Professional Association. In the 12 years that I have served on the school board, I have voted and kept as my goal to ensure that students of our district receive the highest quality of education to develop the possibilities of their capabilities. My voting record is clearly indicative of being fiscally responsible, ensuring that our children are receiving the best quality of education in this district. My principles as your board member are to connect with our community and reach out to their needs, employ our superintendent, delegate authority, and to be vigilant in monitoring our performance of our students' performances and our performance. I'm watchful over a $60 million budget. I do expect our district to live within our means. In my 12 years, I have voted on cuts recommended by administration and have questioned any cuts that would directly affect our children and listened to our taxpayers and have still asked to see more cuts to the budget. I take my job as your board member very seriously and do not fear asking questions of our administrators or taking the time to research the issues brought before the board that affect the children, the taxpayers, and our teachers and staff. I continue to look for curriculum improvements and to maintain service for our children while trimming the budget and being watchful of the constant state funding matters. I believe that the biggest hurdle for the school board members now in today's economy that started back in 2008 is to totally understand the state and our economy. Illinois' state budget is a mess. There are problems that are linked to our school funding. Areas of focus are now on modernizing our tax code, dealing with pension funding problems, and dealing with the statute of 1994. Currently, our property taxes bring the majority of funding to our schools in Illinois. This has created a serious problem for homeowners due to their homes depreciating, yet their tax bills still increasing every year. Tax caps were created to react to the Consumer Price Index, which is known as the CPI. CPI kept increasing while our homes kept depreciating. We are now starting to come out of that deep recession, but it will take about 3 or more years for us to actually see the result of that curation. In the last 5 years, we have not been appropriately funded by the state either. The state has prorated our categorical payments of about 89% of our funds, leaving the rest on us. The state has not been timely with these payments either, yet our district has maintained a balanced budget during this period. Over 70% of our funding is coming directly from our local community, which is our taxpayers, while the state is contributing less than 20% and the federal government picks up the balance. With my financial background, I have an in-depth knowledge and understanding of these problems that are now the board's primary focus of concern. I feel that I'm an asset to our school board and can continue to keep quality education, minimal taxation, constant transparency, oversight, and accountability to our community and taxpayers as my primary focus. I maintain constant communication with our legislators, and with the Senate Bill 16 introduced last year that had plans to redistribute our funds, and now the introduction of Senate Bill 1 that is an evidence-based school funding solution for Illinois, Constant communication with our legislators is mandatory as board members. With any legislative changes to school funding, we must be on our best of our return of our investment, which is our schools. Senate Bill 1403, now as equitable and adequate funding, is now being the focus on all school boards because school funding has dropped below the 2006 funding level. The budget crisis in Illinois has resulted in drastic cuts to our school programs. Full attention must be given to the impact of any legislation, and I, as your board member, am constantly watchful of these bills. Mandates have also created more funding problems, and the school district should not be pressured into following all of these mandates due to the proration and underfunding from the state. In closing, I, Maureen Flanagan Broderick, ask for your vote on April 7th. With all of my financial background and 12 years of board experience and full understanding of the lack of state funding and burdening on our taxpayers and school funding, I feel that I'm one of your best choices for school board. And I would like to thank the American Federation of Teachers, Faculty Council Local 604 for tonight's opportunity to hear all of us candidates that are in the election for April 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jonathan Cohen. Everybody around town who knows me calls me JP, so that's where you see the JP going up there. First and foremost, I'd like to thank my fellow members of the AFT for coming out tonight and seeing what we all have to say. I'd like to thank the administrators for coming out tonight and all the community members for coming out and really valuing our time and your time. You're showing that this means something to you. This is important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the questions and then we'll see if we have anything to add from there. So first and foremost, my role, my belief in a role as a board member is we act as a check and a balance. We act as a team with the superintendent to ensure the best quality education for our children. It's a difficult process because in my mind, there's going to be many cogs in the wheel, and we're going to have a central hub of our children and the children in the district. And you need all of the cogs in the wheel to be working properly. We need to make sure that funding is there. We need to make sure that we have support from administration. We need to make sure that our teachers have the resources necessary. So the point of the board member and the whole thing there is to help lead and guide the district into that direction. The reason why I've decided to run for school board is that I have 3 young children. Alexa, my youngest, she's at the Spencer campus. She's in 1st grade. She's 7 years old. I have a 3.5-year-old son who will be going to the Spencer campus soon too. And I have a 7-month-old little girl. So that's probably the best reason you can have. There's really no hidden agenda other than I want the best for my children and I want the best for everybody else's children also. There is the civic duties. I feel that it's important to help out your community in ways that benefit from your strengths. And I have a number of strengths when it comes to education and background and managing a budget. First off, my educational background is I have a bachelor's of science in biology, and I have a bachelor's of science degree in human biology, and I have a master's of arts in education. I got that degree during my process of tenure at my current employer, which is Kankakee Community College. And my terminal degree is actually a Doctor of Chiropractic degree. My work history is I started off as a chiropractor and I was in private practice for a number of years and I had a successful practice, but I didn't get my full fulfillment in the healthcare field. I liked the education aspect of it, which is what brought me into I started teaching high school and I still hold my Pell license. So I taught a year in the high school system and I was offered a job at the community college and I've been there ever since. At the community college, I started off as just a teacher and just doing my teaching duties and going home, and I've slowly kind of worked my way into having a larger part in the administrative work. My main job is still teaching, but I have a part in that. The thing that brought me that direction was there's a program called Leadership Development Program. They call it the LDP program, And when we get into that program, they have you put an emphasis on doing strategic planning, continuous quality improvement, and as I was actually discussing, as I was there early this morning with a CQI, continuous quality improvement issue this morning, but those are very good qualities for me to have for this district. Why? I understand an educator's point of view. I understand a parent's point of view. I have young children in the system. I understand a resident's point of view who wants us to be fiscally responsible. During my tenure at Kankakee Community College, I also had another business that kind of was forced upon me to start up. Is I also am a chiropractic coverage doctor, and that has kind of turned into a new thing, which is another budget I have to be handling and maintaining. My goals for the school district is, I think we have a wonderful district. As a matter of fact, I went on and I looked for our we called it the district development plan, right? So I went on and I found that, which is, in my mind, that's strategic planning, but it's the same thing, it's just different verbiage. And I think it's spot on. We have a lot of great stuff going on in the district. We have small problems that need to be dealt with. And most of the problems that I've heard of just throughout the community, they've all been addressed here. One of the issues that I heard from the community was some programs for gifted students. I see that there. So one of the issues that I heard through the community was communication. And if you take a step back, communication is very important. During my master's degree program, I had a lot of classes in organizational behavior, and there was conflict management, and an overlying theme in all of them is communication. Communication is key. There was an article I just read online about Netflix and the success of Netflix, and the reason why they have been so successful is their CEO has two things that they do at the end of every meeting, which is an important process for the end of every board meeting, is one, explain the decisions made to one another, and two, how are you going to disseminate? How are you going to communicate that? So that's important, because you can make all these decisions, but if you don't send the information on to everybody else, it's not very useful. What strengths do I see in the district? We have great teachers. We have a very low turnover rate in our teachers. There was another article I recently was reading that was saying that there's up to 50% of new teachers leave their post within 5 years and they get out of education altogether. That's not good. And it's not money, it's not the amount of time, it's actually the lack of support from administration is one of the biggest factors. We don't have a very large turnover rate here. That's good. I see that as a very strong relationship between administration and teachers. I want to keep it that way. That needs to be strong. In order for us to have a successful district, we need to keep that relationship. As for the tax levy, with this past tax levy, it was needed. Our state is in financial crisis. We have a new governor. We weren't sure where our funding was going to come from. We needed to have the levy. And in my mind, that was a very important move. Once again, my name is JP Cohen. Thank you for having me out tonight.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Nick DeSandro wasn't able to attend tonight, but he did send a statement that I will read for him. Nick. In 2011, I ran for the Board of Education to bring a new perspective. Upon my start with 122, I was elected board president by the Board of Education. Again, I was given this honor by the board in 2013. I feel that during my term, I've always looked at every decision as a taxpayer, a business owner, and as a parent. I believe these three key factors help guide me in my role as a board member. I voted to approve the tax levy. I feel as a board member, we need to keep a balance between costs and services. We need to provide a good quality, safe education while monitoring spending. Keep the services our students need while being fiscally responsible. So that is his statement. So now I'll move on to Mr. Herring, please.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Al Herring, and I'm running for position on the New Lenox School District 122 School Board. I have lived and worked in New Lenox in the New Lenox community for 34 years. My wife, Linda, and I have had 3 children who have attended and graduated from this district. As a member of the school board, should I be elected, my role would be to work collaboratively with the other board members to assist in guiding the district through its future challenges. In addition, I would communicate my thoughts and ideas in a respectful way while representing community members. Whether I agreed with the decisions of the board or not, I would support them as part of the District 122 team. I was inspired to run for the board when, after being disappointed in the behavior and actions at some past board meetings, it was suggested to me on a couple of occasions by a couple of different acquaintances that I should consider running for the board. Upon some reflection, I thought that instead of complaining about the situation, I would try to do something about it, be part of the solution. I believe I bring several positive traits to the board that I consider to be strengths. I think of myself as a good listener with an open mind who listens to all sides of an issue before making a decision. I have been involved in education for almost 35 years, so I have firsthand experience with many of the issues that schools face. I enjoy working cooperatively with others, and I really enjoy when the students are in the spotlight for the good things that they do. My goals, should I be elected, are to help in bringing a proper decorum and order back to the board, to work with other board members in moving our district forward as it tackles current and future issues, and as much as possible to be seen and not heard. I think that overall the district has shown good financial judgment and made good financial decisions. I think the district has kept financial cuts as far from the classroom as possible or away from the classroom for as long as possible. I think the district has been proactive on issues that schools have faced, for example, addressing the bullying issue. I think there is a strong staff of people who care about students. The improvements that I think are needed are mostly related to facilities. I believe there's some equipment in buildings that have long since passed their usefulness or effectiveness. I would like to see those updated as quickly as possible. I know there is only so much money to go around, so the challenge is going to be to balance the needs of the students with the upkeep of the facilities. Recently, the board voted to increase the tax levy. I was in favor of that decision. Had I been on the board, I would have voted for it. As many people have heard, the state of Illinois has not been funding the schools, so local districts are forced to make up the difference, either through cuts or taxes or both. The district has been making cuts, so I believe it was only right to increase the tax levy while they had the opportunity to do so. Not doing so would have had a detrimental effect for the following years as well. In closing, I would like to thank the New Lenox Council of AFT Local 604 for hosting this event and for giving me and the other candidates the opportunity to participate in it. I would also like to say that I am encouraged by the number of candidates running for the school board. I believe it's indicative of the support the community has for our schools. Thank you.
Mr. Herring. Mr. Pender.
Good evening. My name is Bill Pender. I'd like to start out by thanking the Teachers Union for holding this event and for the wonderful work that you do day in and day out in our schools. A little background about myself. I'm the youngest of 15 kids from hometown, and that's correct. And 2 years ago, I made a joke about my poor father, and I think that cost me the election, so I won't make that. I've lived in New Lenox for about 10 years with my wife Jenny, who've been married almost 14 years, and our 3 beautiful daughters, Audrey, age 12, who's in 6th grade at Bentley, and Caroline, age 11, who's in 5th grade at Bentley, and Sophie, who is 7 going on 30, in 2nd grade at Tyler. I currently hold a bachelor's degree in social science with a minor in secondary education, a master's in educational administration, and an MBA, both from Governor State. I've worked in high schools for over 15 years as a math and social studies teacher and an assistant principal. Being a concerned parent and taxpayer and an educator by trade, I feel serving on the board is a great opportunity to marry several aspects of my life that I find to be most important. The schools were the single biggest factor that influenced the decision to move my family to New Lenox, and they are the first thing that I speak of when anybody asks what I like best about New Lenox. In the time we've had the kids in the district, we've seen the wonderful results of the education they're receiving. The key component to my candidacy is that I'm running so I can offer assistance in any way that I can. I'm of the belief that the school board should serve as a support system for the schools. It is the teachers, staff, and administration that do the daily work, and we should be there to help in any way that we can. The board should not be the focus, but rather there should be focus on the wonderful faculty and staff and the countless accomplishments of our wonderful students. I had previously served on the board for 1 year. During that short time on the board, I will tell you that yes, I voted for the tax levy, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. Nobody wants to raise taxes. However, as was presented to us by the administration, if the tax levy did not pass this year, the district would have been forced to cut $650,000 this year and another $1.3 million next year. These cuts would have been necessary if the tax levy did not pass this year, but again pass next year. We would still have to make those cuts. To vote against the tax levy is not a vote to save the taxpayers money. It would likely have just the opposite effect, because with the drastic cuts that would have to be made, it is inevitable that the effect would be seen in the classroom. And rest assured, when cuts affect the classroom, they affect your property value. And they would drop dramatically and more than likely never be recovered. The amount that would be lost in property values would far outreach the tax increase. With the state of Illinois behind in making their payments and reducing the amount of their payments over the past few years, it is more imperative than ever to pass the tax levy. Anybody who truly understands the negative effect of a failed tax levy would have not only on our schools, but especially on our taxpayers, could not, in my opinion, in good conscience vote against the tax levy. I'd like to make one thing very clear. You will never hurt the taxpayers by putting kids first. As a board, we should continue to seek alternative revenues and look for areas where we can cut costs while still maintaining excellence in education. My top 2 goals as a candidate are: first, I hope to keep the district on the forefront of technology to help our students continue to excel. I believe our district is a leader technologically and hope to see it continue. The plan the district has in place for the park testing is more than impressive. Most districts will not be able to perform that task with such expertise. Additionally, the Crisis Go app that our faculty and staff have been equipped with allows 122 to provide the best, quickest, real-time response to keep our kids safe in the event of a catastrophe. Second, I hope to be a liaison between the families, taxpayers, and the district to continue the great atmosphere that is District 122 and the village of New Lenox. In closing, I'd like to believe that I'd be a quality choice for this position for 2 reasons. First, my education and experience as a teacher and administrator can allow me to offer a unique perspective of the daily happenings and problems that schools face. And second, I'm not running with any sort of ulterior motive or agenda other than to offer support and assistance in any way possible to keep the excellent teachers in schools working so productively. If I'm not elected, I will continue to find ways to volunteer and positively contribute to New Lenox. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pender. Mrs. Rosenfeld?
Hi, my name is Michelle DeGroot Rosenfeld. I'd like to thank the union for sponsoring this event and everyone who came out today to watch. I'll give you a little background about myself. I grew up in New Lenox. I'm a townie, just like your union president, Katie Koras. I went to New Lenox schools, graduated from OPU at the time. And then I went to Lincoln Way Central, where I had Mr. Herring for math. After high school, I went to the University of Illinois at Chicago. I was an econ major there. At the same time, I started working at the Swiss Bank Corporation at the Board of Trade. I worked down on the floor at the Options Exchange and also at the Merck. And I worked up on a trading desk, mostly with index options. After that, I worked there for 4 years after college, and then I went to law school at University of Nebraska. And I've been an attorney for almost 20 years, and I'm currently employed as full-time as I do divorce work for Gwendolyn J. Stirk and the Family Law Group in Orland Park. I am married. I have 2 sons, one who is here under slight duress, who's a sophomore at Lincoln Way West, and then I also have a 7th grader at Liberty. You may be asking yourself, why would someone run for the school board? I would say I feel like I would do a good job in representing the interests of the students and also of the taxpayers. I've been involved in the community, like everyone here has said also, since my whole life. Honestly, I've worked for the past several years with the New Lenox Area Historical Society. They have a fundraiser every year, spaghetti dinner. I've worked in the planning of that. I've worked with the Lincoln Way Foundation as a volunteer. I've been on the boards of 2 nonprofits that work with children. I've been a Sunday school teacher and a vacation Bible school teacher, although I am not highly skilled as a teacher. Additionally, I've always been involved in the schools with my kids. I've been in PTO. I've been a room mom many times. I've gone on a lot of field trips. And I have been a classroom volunteer. I've worked with kids who needed extra help in reading. I think running for school board is an extension of my long-standing commitment and dedication to community involvement. I think that my career experience would allow me to make a good contribution to the school board. I have a background in economics. I've worked in the financial markets extensively. I think that we need board members who are interested and capable at looking closely at the numbers when making their voting decisions. My background as an attorney obviously provides insight and knowledge of the legal issues that might come before the board. There's also a big part of my work as an attorney that involves negotiations and problem solving, all skills that I think are relevant and critical to the role as a board member. I know these schools, I went to these schools, my kids went to these schools. I care about the success and the tradition of these schools, both as a parent and as a taxpayer. If I were elected to the school board, my focus would be on accountability. First of all, financial accountability. I would take seriously the responsibility that the school board has to manage taxpayer money in a fiscally responsible manner. The school board's role, in my opinion, is to balance the needs of the students with the interests of the taxpayers. I want my kids and your kids to get a good education. As a parent, I truly believe that. But I'm also a taxpayer, and I understand the concerns that many have about property taxes. I believe my financial background is useful and helpful in making those decisions as to how to spend taxpayer money. I also would focus on educational accountability. I want to focus on district test scores and making sure we are doing everything possible to support student achievement. Going hand in hand with that, obviously, is making sure our teachers have proper support in the classroom and that their needs are being heard. Finally, board member accountability. I believe in transparency and open access to all information for the public and for board members. I think it is the taxpayer's right, and I strongly support it. I'm an independent-minded person. I'm not looking to be spoon-fed information. I'm going to make decisions like you would make when spending your own money at your own house. I care about balancing the bottom line with the needs of the students in our district. So I would ask for your vote on April 7th and remind you that early voting starts on March 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Swallow. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole Swallow, and I'm a new candidate running for a seat on this year's school board. I've been a resident here in New Lenox for 8 years, and as a parent of 3 children, Luke, who's in 5th grade, Lilith in 2nd grade, and Logan in 1st grade at the Nelson campus, I fondly appreciate the educational well-being my children have here in District 122. I felt it was a good time to take action and do something to contribute positively to our district and our community. With that contribution, I bring many positive attributes. First and foremost, as a parent, I understand the excitement, challenges, and current learning environment faced by our students, teachers, and administration. I have a master's degree in accounting, working for a not-for-profit healthcare system for a good part of my career. I understand fiscal constraints of government payers and making a tight budget work year after year with looming and unknown factors. I'm also an adjunct instructor teaching accounting and finance courses at Joliet Junior College. I'm fortunate to experience being both a parent and an educator, seeing things from both sides and gaining valuable perspective both personally and professionally. I'm an active member in our community, volunteering as a coach, Girl Scout leader, catechist, and helping out in any way needed with the many organizations my children are involved: soccer, baseball, softball, and within our district as a parent volunteer. If elected, I plan to contribute my ideas to the board in a positive manner and participate as a productive board member, generating new ideas and bringing cohesive and constructive resolution to matters. Our district's strengths outweigh the needed improvements. As stated at the semi-annual finance meeting, we are fiscally sound with a stable 5-year financial forecast, despite unknown state funding. We have fantastic programs as well as academic support and special education services, all benefiting our students. As a parent of 2 epileptic children, I see firsthand how our teachers, staff, and administration put the needs of our children first in advocating for their benefit. There is always room for improvement, expanding on things we are doing well, implementing new plans and projects, or venturing into new territory. I am open and willing to hear those new ideas so that we may continue to grow and prosper. In regards to the tax levy that passed in December, I would have voted yes. Because nearly 80% of our school funding is provided by property tax dollars, it's critical that the tax levy is passed every time it's put up to vote. By voting no, it may appear to give the taxpayers a short-term reprieve. However, it causes a long-term deficit that will take twice as long to recover from, and it really amounts to dollars a month on a taxpayer's bill. Thank you to the Teachers Union and for your time tonight, and I would appreciate your vote on April 7th.
Thank you all for doing that, and now we have some questions for you. So I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Ann Klein. We're going to start with Mrs. Babington. So this is what we were talking about with the bags in front of you. So all we ask from you is that, Mrs. Babington, if you would reach in, pull out a question, and then just tell us what number you have, and then we will show you the question up on the screen for the audience, and Mrs. Klein, wonderful teacher here in our district, will read the question out loud for all to hear.
Three.
Question 3. School boards make many decisions, and some you will favor and some you will not. Please describe your past experience with conflict resolution and consensus building, and explain how you would support a decision of which you are not in favor.
I've served on a number of boards, working for a number of nonprofit organizations. I realize that things don't always go your way, but you have to work with other people on the board to come to the best answer and conclusion that's best for the community. And it may not be the best, maybe it's not the best thing for you, but it might be the best for the common good. And so it has happened to me in the past where that's the case, and you have to roll punches and do the best you can from what you've been given.
Thank you, Mrs. Abington. Mrs. Broderick? And just as a reminder, you have 2 minutes, and at the 20-second mark, we will give you a warning that you're getting close to the end of your 2 minutes. In an era of limited financial resources, how will you enlist support for public school spending from conservative voters and taxpayers? How can the board prove itself fiscally responsible to those citizens?
I think the way the board can, sitting on the board, we have now put on the website so the board can see the full disclosure of why things are needed, why we're in the financial pinch that we're in, explaining on the board the state funding. The state funding has created major problems that people are not totally aware of. The understanding to the taxpayers as to what's going on, full knowledge to the taxpayers of knowing what's going on. Not that just we're beating them up because we have to rely on tax money from them, but unfortunately, the way the state has done this, we've got to talk to our legislators and let the people know and the taxpayers know. So we've got to be aggressively pursuing it, and I think we also need to have a legislative committee put on our board to pursue that so that the taxpayers see what we're doing too. Full and open transparency on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Broderick. Mr. Cohen?
12?
With potential budget cuts, what are your views on the optimal class size within each grade level? For example, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, 1st through 3rd, 4th through 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Pre-K and kindergarten, I believe those need to have the smallest class sizes. I would like to see class sizes in the 22 to 24 student range. As you get into 1st to 3rd, 4th and 4th to 6th grade, the class sizes can go up a little bit, but I don't really like to see class sizes much over 25. I believe our current average class sizes are about 26 in some areas, if I'm not mistaken. But 7th and 8th grade, I'd like to keep it capped at the same. With that being said, it matters what type of class work is being covered as you get into the 7th and 8th grade class range and in the 6th grade class range. So if it's more of a physical education class, sometimes it'll work out better. You have people working in teams and in groups, and it'll be easier to have a little bit larger class size. If you're doing stuff such as math or reading or other language arts type stuff, I think that you need to have a smaller class size in order to get the best for your students.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mr. Herring?
Number 3.
School boards make many decisions, and some you will favor and some you will not. Please describe your past experience with conflict resolution and consensus building, and explain how you would support a decision of which you are not in favor.
Well, in regards to the first part about describing the past experience with conflict resolution, consensus building, I've been in situations with students and teachers that have had issues. We've tried to work those out with the help of a counselor, with the parents, and sit down and hash things out. And many times not everybody's happy, but we try to do what's best for the student and in the long run what's going to be best for them. Consensus building, there have been issues in the past with personnel that we have not always agreed with, especially at Lincoln Way when we were splitting and where different people wanted to go. But we did what was best, that we thought was best for the students at the time, for the district in the long haul. And as much as possible, we did what was best for the instructors as well. How would I support a decision of which I'm not in favor? First and foremost, I would not speak out against it. I would not say anything detrimental to the decision. I would do what is asked. If it is to go out and campaign for a tax referendum, I would do that. If it's to look at personnel decisions, I would do that because you have to be, in order to be part of the team, you have to be in it together.
Thank you, Mr. Herring. Mr. Pender?
Number 2.
Understanding that it is one of the school board's roles to set the climate for the entire district and that we have had some animosity amongst members of our school board over the last several years, what do you think your role will be in creating a climate of mutual respect?
Well, my job is, as an assistant principal, is kind of a liaison between the faculty and the principal. And there are plenty of times where the faculty is not happy with a decision, and we still have to work together. This is no different than working together on any committee. One of the greatest things that you can do as a teacher is teach some sort of collaborative lesson where the kids learn to work together and learn to work on a committee. You always have to attack, when you disagree with an idea, you attack the idea, not the person. And unfortunately, we are in a society that, well, I don't like your idea, so you're an idiot. And that's not the case. You know, I've always thought every student should have to take a sociology class so they can see where every other person might be coming from. Why do I have this perspective? Because I'm coming from a large family as opposed to somebody who's who's an only child. Everybody has strengths, and when you have to start with respect, because if you don't respect each other's, you may not respect their position, but respect them as a person. That clears out all the animosity, I think, is my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Pender. Mrs. Rosenfeld?
Number 12.
With potential budget cuts, what are your views on the optimal class size within each grade level? Pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, 1st through 3rd, 4th through 6th, 7th and 8th.
I would echo what Mr. Cohen said. Also, obviously with the smaller class sizes as the kids get older, and the larger, as the kids get older, as they get older, 7th and 8th grade, you want to see smaller class sizes because hopefully they're behaving better and they're a little easier to control, and there's not as close supervision needed from them. I think the average class size is something 24 to 27 with the district. I think also when you're looking at a class size, you have to take into account the makeup of the class. If you have a lot of kids with IEPs in the class, it makes a difference as to how the teacher is going to be able to teach the kids in the class. I also think, there are potential budget cuts. It's something that we're going to have to deal with, and we have to have a plan moving forward how to deal with it. Hopefully, I see, in my own personal experience as a parent, that it seems like the teachers have open communication with administrators. And I would like to see that continue, that the teachers would be able to bring their concerns to administrators if they don't feel they're getting enough support, and that their concerns would be addressed by the administrators.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosenfeld. Mrs. Swallow?
Number 4.
Describe your experience with budget management, budgetary controls, and budget reduction. There will also be a follow-up question that we can address after you answer that one. So again, could you please describe your experience with budget management, budgetary controls, and budget reduction?
Ironically, this is what I do for a living. I work for a healthcare system, and I manage the physician practice, and I do, part of my job is to handle the budget for the year. So it's, in terms of budget management, I handle the budget input and I work with the physicians and their practices, and then I have to go out and work with them in terms of managing their budget. In terms of making cuts in budget controls and budget reduction, I guess in terms of the entire process, I have to handle that. And there's a team of people who work on it, but I have to go out and then speak with them and ask and talk with them about what they feel is important to have for the year, or in terms of cost by way of employees, what they need in terms of supplies, and not having the clinical background. I mean, I do to a certain extent just from talking to them, but I'm not a physician nor a nurse. So to compare it to the school district or school board, or being on the school board and being a teacher. I'm not in the classroom and not physically knowing what you need by way of budgeting. In that comparative sense, I feel like where I sit now in terms of my career, being a board member, I feel my experience with budgeting is very comforting, and I have a true understanding of that. The process that we would need to go through to understand the management controls and the budget, those reductions that would have to be made year after year to make that work for the district and to make ends meet.
So as a follow-up, what factors should be considered when trying to establish a reasonable balance between budgeting for needed district improvements and maintaining the fiscal integrity of the district?
Well, there's a whole lot of factors that would have to be considered. We would have to take into consideration, obviously, the students, the teachers, every possible overhead cost, and then any improvements that would have to go into. Someone else had alluded to some of the improvements that would have to go into maintaining the schools themselves, let alone the cost for books and resources, salaries, and all of that has to be. It's kind of like taking 10 pounds of potatoes and trying to fit them in a 5-pound bag. It's a long and daunting process, but it works, and every year it happens. You get those 10 pounds of potatoes in that 5-pound bag, and everybody gets what they need. And you do have to make some concessions here and there, but you figure out what is necessary to make it work in the classroom, in the district, and then those cuts that fall off, they come back up next year, and then we figure out how to make that work in the following year. And with the factors that we have on the table here, with the state funding that is unknown or fluctuating, it's year to year when you decide if you get those ancillary items. And that's pretty much how it works.
Thank you, Mrs. Swallow. Mrs. Babington, would you please pick your second question? Mrs. Babington, could you please pick up your microphone after I read the question?
5.
Thank you. As the state continues to reduce funding and the board and administration continues to make necessary and responsible budget cuts, where do you see additional support and/or budget cuts coming from?
Can you read it once more?
Absolutely. As the state continues to reduce funding and the board and administration continues to make necessary and responsible budget cuts, where do you see additional support and/or budget cuts coming from?
I'm not sure if I have the best answer for that, because if you're being as conservative as you can, and I would look outside the district. I would look to your legislators and see where you can get maybe more aid from the state, or more aid from the government, or more aid for grants. If you're doing whatever you can, internally to keep everything as lean as possible, and you're following all the rules, I would have to look outside the district to bring funds inside. I guess that would be my best answer.
Thank you, Mrs. Babington. Mrs. Broderick?
Number 3.
Describe your experience with budget management, budgetary controls, and budget reduction. Along with that same follow-up question, with what factors should be considered when trying to establish a reasonable balance between budgeting for needed district improvements and maintaining the fiscal integrity of the district?
This one's different. Number 3.
Sorry, I apologize for that.
I can go with that.
So number 3, school boards make many decisions, and some you will not favor, and some you will favor, and some you will not. Please describe your past experience with conflict resolution and consensus building, and explain how you would support a decision of which you are not in favor.
Well, we know that I'm very familiar with this because there has been conflict, and we are only one of 7. We sit as one of 7. We are not a majority when we sit and make a voice vote on it. We have to respect the majority, and the majority, if it's 4-3 or 5-2, we have to respect that if we don't approve of the decision, and we have to come out as the board, unified. We cannot separate and go against what we may not agree with the board, but we are to be supportive, and we are only one of 7. So one of 7 has no voice. It's the whole total board that has the vote and the consensus that must be carried through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Broderick. Mr. Cohen?
Number 9.
Number 9. Do you have any specific changes you want to make in school district policies, programs, or the various school curricula being offered? If so, what changes do you want to make and why?
There are some changes that I would have liked to make in the years past that are already being made now. And one that I touched on in my introduction was communication, but the lines of communication between the schools and the parents and the students have opened up immensely in the email chain and the phone calls home. But one issue that I would like to hit on with communication is the underserved and the people who have a lack of technology within the household. Do I have a great solution for it? No, I don't. I would like to ponder the idea, and I would like to look into different solutions for that. But that's a population that they are in our tax base, they are residents, and they need to be having the same services we all have.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mr. Herring?
Number 9. Specific changes.
Yes. Would you like me to read that again?
No, it's going to be a very short answer. There is nothing at this time that I have in mind that I would like to see changed.
Thank you, Mr. Herring. Mr. Pender?
Number 7.
Do you support a performance-based compensation program such as merit pay? Please explain.
No, I do not. I think that is too vague of a program. And it kind of goes back to the No Child Left Behind. You expect every just for example, expect every freshman to be able to pass an algebra class when not every freshman can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. There are countless students who enter kindergarten who don't know their real first name. And you're going to expect every kindergarten teacher to have the same results at the end of the year. Well, that's not fair. It's along the lines of having a requirement to pass a PE class that every kid be able to dunk a basketball. Well, that's not going to happen. And it is that merit pay, on the surface seems like a great idea, but you are not comparing apples to apples with every class. Every teacher that's ever taught for any length of time has had years that they would have walked away from that job in a second. And it's because they have that class. And we've all had that. And it's not fair that you're gonna assess one teacher who has that class the same as the teacher who has all the kids who, when you tell them to read chapter 3, they've already read chapter 5. Other teachers, you're gonna say read chapter 3 and they don't even have a book yet. So, that merit pay that's not a fair basis so I do not support that.
Thank you, Mr. Pender. Mrs. Rosenfeld?
Number 2.
Understanding that it is one of the school board's roles to set the climate for the entire district, and that we have had some animosity amongst members of our school board over the last several years, what do you think your role will be in creating a climate of mutual respect?
I think, I love that question. I think my role would be to control myself in a professional, respectful manner. I have to do it every day when I'm at work, when I'm speaking to judges, and when I'm working with clients. So I don't have any problem with that. And I think that if we're teaching our kids to behave in a respectful manner, I think that we as board members should be emulating that also.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosenfeld. Mrs. Swallow?
Number 14.
With potential budget cuts, how will you keep teacher pay competitive with surrounding districts to retain District 122 teachers? Please explain.
Well, again, I think this is back to the whole checks and balances of budgeting and my analogy of the potatoes in the bag. You have to stay competitive to keep the best of what's out there. And I think we do have the best teachers. In my experience with my 3 children, we've had the best teachers, in my opinion. So to keep them, you really do have to stay competitive. And obviously there's some type of grading system or something I'm not real sure of in terms of competitive packages or just in terms of teacher pay. So keeping in check with that and or keeping in line with that and in check with the budget in terms of that would have to be a top priority in terms of a budget and making sure that we're keeping that in line. I mean, obviously there's a balance with that and making sure that we're keeping that. I don't want to say in check again, but in terms of the teachers do a lot of work and they deserve to be paid well. So you certainly, and just speaking from my profession as well, I mean, you can't expect someone to come in and do a stellar job and then expect them to do it for pennies. So you've got to look at the whole budget in its entirety and see where you're going to get your maximum benefit. And you can't trip over the dollar bills to pick up the dimes. So you need to do what's best and put your money where you're going to get your most benefit, and that's in your teachers.
Thank you, Mrs. Swallow. We would also like to go with another round of questions. So Mrs. Babington, would you please choose your 3rd question? As you know, there is much talk in Springfield about state pensions, especially educators' pensions. What are your thoughts on this? How will you advocate for our teachers and retirees?
I do believe that teachers and members of the district, they put in years of time and patience and sometimes blood, sweat, and tears. And they deserve to be compensated. I don't think that somebody was promised, it's a commitment, it's a contract, it should be fulfilled. And so I believe that the state needs to figure out how they need to figure out through their own budget how they can make good on the promises they have made to our educators.
Thank you, Mrs. Babington. Mrs. Broderick?
Number 2.
Understanding that it is one of the school board's roles to set the climate for the entire district and that we have had some animosity amongst members of our school board over the last several years, what do you think your role will be in creating a climate of mutual respect?
In order to gain respect, you have to have respect for everyone that sits on your board. There's also the Illinois Association of School Boards that works with you collectively to work with you to get your group, if you are having situations, to get you collectively to work together. Everyone comes with different opinions. Everyone has to respect. Board agreements is what we set up. Board agreements are what should be followed and adhered to, and that's part of what should set a mutual climate of respect, because each one does have a difference of opinion and should be respected no matter how different their opinion might be. So it is having a respect between everyone and a trust between everyone that will develop this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Broderick. Mr. Cohen?
Number 13.
What is your stance on keeping art and music a forefront in the classrooms?
I think it's a necessity. Coming from my medical background and my background in teaching too, it's just the more types of stimulation you give to the children, the better they're going to learn. If we just zero them in on one thing, they're never going to be exposed. We might have some hidden talent that never gets the opportunity to use it. But also, you're going to be hitting other centers of the brain, which will increase overall brain activity for our children and help them to succeed in other subject areas.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mr. Herring?
Number 2.
Understanding that it is one of the school board's roles to set the climate for the entire district and that we have had some animosity amongst members of our school board over the last several years, what do you think your role will be in creating a climate of mutual respect?
The way I look at it, the way I've tried to deal with any time I have a disagreement with someone or some group, I've tried to talk to that person individually, let them know where I stand, find out where they stand. And knowing that, so when both parties know how the other feels, if there's any hard feelings that can be done at that time behind closed doors individually. In a group setting, I think you focus on the goal, on the task at hand, on the issues, and then anything else that needs to be said or done, you meet individually to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Herring. Mr. Pender?
What? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
What is your stance on keeping art and music a forefront in the classrooms?
It has to be. There's study after study has been shown to show that music and fine arts education increases student success. Music, just as a whole separate thing, I mean, you look at your student bands, usually those kids are honor students. They're very good students. And music is so important of a factor of that. Art, as far as that goes, that's, again, very important. I have a good friend who is an architect, and he goes to his grave saying that it was art that got him interested in that. There are a lot of this, it's not just fun and games. I know our teachers for both subjects have a set curriculum that they do follow, and those lead to expanding students' minds and imagination. And I think it was in Mr. Holland's opus, he said, it's great that you're only going to teach reading and writing, but without fine arts, they're going to have nothing to read and write about.
Thank you, Mr. Pender. Mrs. Rosenfeld?
14.
With potential budget cuts, how will you keep teacher pay competitive with surrounding districts to retain District 122 teachers? Please explain.
I think as far as the potential budget cuts, that the surrounding school districts will be facing the same budget constraints that our district would be facing. So I think that the surrounding school districts, their pay would also have to go down. I feel comfortable now that our teachers are making competitive salaries with the surrounding districts. And I think also with, as far as keeping pay competitive, there's also other aspects of, that make one district preferable to another district. I think that as far as like having a positive working environment, and so I'm not saying, look, we're going to pay you nothing, but we're going to be really positive with you. I'm saying that if you're trying to decide as a teacher between two districts that have their pay, the salary is the same, the things that you're going to be looking for as a teacher are where do you know you're going to have a positive relationship? Where are you going to have supportive administrators? My personal experience has been that the administration, my personal experience with administrators in this district has been very positive. And also my experience with teachers in the district has been very positive. So as far as the budget cuts go, though, I honestly think that all the schools in the state are facing similar problems because we're talking about state funding. And I'm just going to keep going and going about this.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosenfeld. Mrs. Swallow?
Number 3.
School boards make many decisions, and some you will favor and some you will not. Please describe your past experience with conflict resolution and consensus building, and explain how you would support a decision of which you are not in favor.
My experience with conflict resolution is a daily battle at work. And consensus building, I'm faced with the task of dealing with a lot of decisions that are not pleasant ones, and having to bear news and things like that that cause a lot of turmoil. So, it's a business, and it's not personal. So we have to communicate in that way and know that it's not about me, it's about what I'm doing, and it's my job. And so I kind of feel that way about the position on the school board. We're doing for the greater good, and we need to work together so that we can accomplish our goal. And whether we agree or not is a moot point, but we need to put all the facts out there, or whatever the case may be, and we need to work through that. And if I don't agree with the decision, if it's a decision I'm not in favor with, then it is what it is. But I know that it's something that, this is just, they may have won the battle, but they haven't won the war. Whatever the case may be, if it's you know, again, it's not personal, it's just a decision that has to be made, and we have to move through that.
Thank you, Mrs. Swallow. Candidates, we would like to do one last question, and it will be the same question for everyone, and we are asking that you write your response on the back of your questionnaire that you brought with you tonight. We will give you 3 minutes in which to write a response, and then we'll go back through again alphabetical order with your response again with a 2-minute response. The question is, how can you contribute to a productive board meeting? If you are a current board member, then please share an example. Your 3 minutes will start right now. And time is up. Thank you. Again, you will have each 2 minutes to respond. So, Mrs. Babington, I will read the question one more time. How can you contribute to a productive board meeting? If you are a current board member, then please share an example.
I believe you always want to be aware of people's time. Time is valuable. So you want to follow points of order for your discussion to make it as timely as possible and be concise, and to go through all your points to get to a timely end. Having a plan of attack to get to go through all your concerns is helpful to allow people their voices to be heard, but at the same time, everybody speak, and but you want to get to a timely end, so everybody has their chance to speak while getting to a timely end. So that.
Thank you, Mrs. Babington. Mrs. Broderick?
Being a board member, to contribute to a productive board meeting, I would talk with the administration, which I've done in the past. I've talked to our business manager if I have questions or concerns. I identify and research the concerns that I have with administration, and then I have administration prepared to talk about it at the meeting, so it's not just thrown at the table so they discuss it without knowing what they're discussing. An example of that was our architectural bills with Leggett, our architect, and why the need for paying them prior to the next funding period. That was fully described and explained so that all of us could adequately approve it without any hesitation in that. The other example is the playground improvement to Cherry Hill, and researching and doing the full project and looking for additional budgetary resources in the current budget or other sources, and being able to go back and let administration then come back with a prepared budget for us on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Broderick. Mr. Cohen?
I'm more of a bullet point person. So first off, I think it's important to ask relevant questions to the matter being discussed. Not just to ask something to ask it because it matters. And if you do have questions, give your insight. I have a different insight than the superintendent will have. I probably have a different insight than the other board members just because of my life experience and where I'm coming from. So my insight would be from a teacher / parent / taxpayer's point of view. Next would be to offer any possible solutions that might be coming to my mind just in those couple moments, or a possible path to take towards the solution. Don't just ask questions, don't just give ideas. Say, hey, here's a path we can take, here's how we can fix it. The next would be, you need to be open-minded and flexible. What my decision is today isn't going to be the same as it might be in a month. Our environment might change, our tax climate might change, the information that I'm being provided with might change. There's a lot of different variables there that could sway your decision. There is one thing that I didn't write that I will still add into it, but when decisions are made, as I said before, communicate. Communication is important. If we make decisions and they affect the community at large and we don't communicate them, they don't know. They have changes, whether good or bad. They're upset that we're not sharing our information with them. So we need to disseminate our decisions in a timely and effective manner.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mr. Herring?
I could contribute productively by being prepared for what is on the agenda through reviewing and studying the packet of materials that are sent out. I'd listen carefully and then contribute any ideas or experiences from my background that would further the cause if needed. If not, I would remain silent.
Thank you, Mr. Herring.
How long have you been married?
Mr. Pender?
As everything, it depends on the particular meeting, but following what Al said, the main thing is to come prepared. Have the board packet read, and come with good quality questions, not the gotcha questions trying to put anybody on the spot, but good, truly inquisitive questions that families are going to want answered. That as a parent and as a taxpayer, that I would want answered if I was not sitting up there, if I was sitting in the crowd. So you got to come prepared with truly inquisitive questions. Read the documents, know all the information that's in front of you, and that's the best way you can contribute to a productive meeting. And sometimes there might be times where you sit quietly. And sometimes you have to, as a board, we're one unit, and sometimes you have to make the right decision, which is not always the popular decision. But you have to be prepared to do that. And you have to be prepared to, no matter what decision you make, there's going to be a percentage of people out there that think you made the wrong decision. And that's life.
Thank you, Mr. Pender. Mrs. Rosenfeld?
I think the key to a good board meeting is preparation. That's reading the agenda and supporting documents prior to the meeting. And I didn't copy off these two guys, but that's emailing for additional documents if it's necessary. And it's being ready to ask the questions that you come up with after reading the documents. I've been on the board for 2 not-for-profit groups. In those groups, I did that. I read my agenda. I looked at the numbers. I was ready with my questions when I got to the meeting. And that's what I would do on this board. As far as the actual sitting down for the meeting, I think it's very important to listen to what other people are saying. It's a big part of communication is actually listening and not coming in with preconceived notions prior to the meeting about people. I think that every member deserves respect, and I think that as board members you should be respectful to everyone. I also feel that it's important, my personal philosophy is I don't need to be right, I want to do what's right, and that's how I would behave as a board member.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosenfeld. Mrs. Swallow?
I would contribute productively to a board meeting by knowing the issues at hand and being prepared coming into the meeting, listening to all board members' input and communicating effectively. And I would productively contribute my thoughts and ideas and help come to resolution on issues in a positive manner. And I'd bring up any new ideas that have been brought to my attention, and then maintain a positive relationship with other board members so that we can maintain cohesive relationships for productive future meetings.
Thank you, Mrs. Swallow. We'd like to take this time to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight and for your honest answers and being open to our questions that we have formed. We do truly appreciate it, and we also would like to thank everyone else in the audience for coming out tonight and supporting and showing that this truly does mean and matter to us. So thank you very much for coming out this evening as well.